Welcome back to 3 Inquisitive Kids. In this video, we will be learning about multiplication of rational numbers, part 2. So now we're going to be able to use what we learned proficiently onto word problem. Again, our course outline for this unit is first rational numbers, then the number line, the absolute value, and then we're going to go into adding and subtracting rational numbers. And now we're learning about multiplication of rational numbers. Our learning goals for today is to be able to apply the distributive property flexibly onto problems and just master how to multiply rational numbers. We learned that the commutative, associative, and distributive properties apply to multiplying. Here we have 3 times 5 equals 5 times 3. 3 times 5 in parentheses times 2 is the same as 3 times the product of 5 and 2. 3 times the sum of 5 and 2 equals 3 times 5 plus 3 times 2. You can see that the first line here is talking about the commutative property of multiplication. The second equation is the associative property, and the third one is the distributive property of multiplication. 2 times 3 equals 6, and 3 times 2 also equals 6. So 2 times 3 equals 3 times 2. 3 times 4 times 0.25 equals 3. 3 times the product of 4 and 0.25 is also 3. So these two expressions are equal. Here we have 2 times the sum of 3 and 4, which equals 14. And here we have 2 times 3 plus 2 times 4, which also gives us 14, which means that these two expressions are equal. So what properties were used above? You can see that for the first example, we used the commutative property of multiplication. We just swapped the order of the factors around. For the second problem, we use the associative property of multiplication. This should all be like very basic concepts for you guys right now. And 3 is the distributive property of multiplication. I don't want to go too deep into these basic concepts. Here we have 1 times negative 6 and negative 6 times 5. You can see that we're starting to use negative numbers. This gives us negative 30, and negative 6 times 5 also gives us negative 30, which means that these two equations are equal. Here we have the product of 3 and negative 4 times negative 5, which equals 60. The product of negative 4 and negative 5 times 3, which gives us 60. For the third problem, we have the sum of 3 and negative 7 times 5, which gives us negative 20, and 5 times 3 plus 5 times negative 7, which is also 20, negative 20, which means that these two expressions are also the same. Example 1, calculate these two expressions. For the first one, we have the sum of negative 5/6 plus 3/8 times negative 24. We're going to use the distributive property of multiplication and distribute this negative 24. So we're left with 11. For the second problem, it's negative 7 times negative 4/3 times 5/14. You start to cancel things out, and we're left with 10/3. Simplify this expression in 2 ways. Solution 1 is to first make these have the same denominators, and then do the parentheses first to give us 1 over 12 times 12, which equals negative 1. And the second solution is to use the distributive property. Distribute this 12 into the parentheses, and we're also left with negative 1. Here's another example. The solution would be to apply the distributive property of multiplication, and we end up having to do a lot of canceling things out, so we're left with only whole numbers, and we do negative 41 plus 4, which gives us negative 37. But is this the correct answer though? Where is the problem? I want you to think about that for a moment. Is this wrong? Here's a correct solution. We have negative 24 times the sum of 1/3, negative 3/4, 1/6, and negative 5/8, right? And you have to know that this is a negative 24, so be sure to never drop the sign. It's negative 24 times 1/3 plus negative 24 times negative 3/4, because this 3/4 is actually a negative term, plus negative 24 times positive 1/6 plus negative 24 times negative 5/8. You have to be aware of the negative signs that's still there. So we're left with negative 8 plus 18 minus 4 plus 15, which is 21. That's the correct solution. Now I want you to compute this example. We do the multiplying to get 21 over 5 plus 63 over 10 minus 21 over 2. And then you have to do all that extra calculating, which gives us 0. But what's a smarter way you can do to solve this problem? You can just factor out this 21. That's the reverse way of using the distributive property of multiplication. We're left with 21 times 0, which is just 0. This compared to all of this, which one is easier? Here's example 2. Solution 1 tells us to first turn this mixed number into an improper fraction. And here I want to add something. There's a negative sign here, so there should also be a negative sign here. And then times 14 to get negative 1,398. For solution 2, all we have to do is, instead of saying negative 99 and 6/7, we can say 1/7 minus 100. That's the same thing. You multiply by 14 to get 2 minus 1,400, negative 1,398. A much more efficient solution. Simplify these 4 expressions. Pause the video because you will need more time. The answers are negative 0.4, negative 5, negative 2, and negative 22. Class summary. 2.7.2 Multiplication of rational numbers. We learned about the commutative property, the associative property, and the commutative property of multiplication, the associative property of multiplication, and the distributive property of multiplication.